Academic and former Zimbabwean Deputy Prime Minister Professor Mutambara is in studio with us to look into the life and times of the late former President Robert Mugabe. Prof, good evening and thank you so much for joining us on The Globe. A very difficult time for you. We're just chatting off air and I was just trying to find out from you the feelings and the emotions. You worked with the former statesman Robert Mugabe. Just take us through your relationship and how Zimbabwe came to being what it is today under his leadership.
Today is a sad day in Zimbabwe. It's a sad day in the continent of Africa. Zimbabweans are mourning. Africans are mourning. They are mourning the first Prime Minister of the Republic of Zimbabwe, the first Executive President of the Republic of Zimbabwe. They are mourning a founding father. There were a number of founding mothers and fathers in Zimbabwe. Janet Ngwenya, Ruth Chinamano, Joyce Mujuru, Victoria Chitepo, Edgar Tekere, Edson Zobwo, Joshua Ngomo, Dumiso Dabengwa. Mugabe is one of those. They were the foundation of the nation of Zimbabwe. He was also instrumental in the liberation of Namibia and South Africa. He was a Pan-Africanist in the genre of Kwame Nkrumah, Ben Bella, and Nyerere Sobukwe. That's the kind of person we're mourning today. We need a bit of history to get to understand where we're coming from. When Mugabe walked into Mozambique in 1975, and in October 75, the Magagao Declaration, the freedom fighters said Mugabe would be our spokesperson, the freedom fighters from Zandla. And after the Chimoio Conference of 1977, he became the official leader of ZANU. From 1977 to 2017, 40 years, Mugabe was the key player in Zimbabwe politically. He was the central figure of Zimbabwean politics. 37 of those years, he was president and prime minister of Zimbabwe. Now, obviously, the legacy is complex. Obviously, the legacy is conflicted. You can't stay on top for 40 years and have a perfect record. Gukura Hundi, Muramba China, violation of human rights, the crushing of the opposition, mismanagement of the economy, corruption. Those are the areas where Mr. Mugabe had a tainted history. But we're saying it's an opportunity for us to learn about what not to do. But we must celebrate his role as a Pan-Africanist, the role as a revolutionary, the role as a liberator. From 1959 to 1980, 21 years, Mugabe was struggling with others, fighting for the freedom and liberation of Zimbabwe. 11 years in prison. These are the areas where, as we mourn him, we celebrate the legacy, the positive legacy. On the negative aspects, we say, what can we learn about governance, about democracy, about country management from the experiences of Robert Mugabe? But on balance as Africans, we are saying, let us celebrate one of us who was a freedom fighter, who was the first prime minister, the founding prime minister, the founding executive president of Zimbabwe. And yes, we must learn from the checkered history, from the elements which were retrogressive, and move on.
Messages of continued tributes from various ends of the world. Russia's President Vladimir Putin sending his condolences to the family and the people of Zimbabwe. African leaders with President Uhuru Kenyatta ordering that flags must fly at half-mast in Kenya. Those reactions and the messages that are coming through are speaking of what you are speaking of in terms of who Robert Mugabe really was and where this all started for the people of Zimbabwe. Just take us through how you came to being part of the former President Mugabe's government and the relationship that you had, before a tumultuous one where it was young men working together to build on a nation that for the people of Zimbabwe and the people of the continent.
Yeah, before I delve into that, let me emphasize that the reason why you have all these people praising Mugabe is that we must take the good with the bad. Nkrumah was taken out by a coup d'etat in 1966, but right now Nkrumah is one of our heroes. So what we're saying is people do make mistakes, but we can't throw the baby with the bath water. we are acknowledging the elements which were positive. So all these people are aware of the transgressions of Robert Mugabe. But they're saying, on balance, the man was able to make a contribution to the continent, to Zimbabwe, and to the globe. Now, personally, for example, of those 40 years that Mugabe was the key player in Zimbabwe, 30 of them I was opposing him. My opposition to Mugabe starts in 1987 as a first year at the University of Zimbabwe. To 2017, I supported the removal of Robert Mugabe through a coup d'etat. So which means I'm standing here as an opponent of Robert Mugabe. An opponent of 30 years. From 1987 to 2017, we are on the opposite side of the divide. But I'm saying, on balance, I'm saying let us be reflective and understand that we take the good with the bad. And as you know, in 2008, there was an inconclusive election. There was a hung parliament. There were negotiations. We ended up with an inclusive government, a three-way inclusive government. Morgan Tsvangirai, myself, and Robert Mugabe were the three principals in the government of national unity in Zimbabwe. From 2009 to 2013, we were able to do a lot of things for the country. We failed in some areas. We succeeded in other areas. In particular, we were able to deliver a new national constitution. We're able to stabilize the economy. And I must say that working with Robert Mugabe, you can't help but admire that he was a man of conviction. He could have been wrong, but he was determined. And so we must appreciate the essence of ideology, the essence of conviction. The man believed in liberation. The man believed in the land. For example, we must give credit for him, number one, for education. Yes. A major contribution to Zimbabwe. We are all products of Robert Mugabe in terms of education. Land. Yes, we might disagree with this aspect or the other, but land was given to black people by Robert Mugabe. That's progress. And then the liberation of Zimbabwe, the liberation of Namibia and South Africa and the continent. And so we were able to work together, although we're coming from different political parties, but we do appreciate his contributions. We do appreciate his role in Zimbabwe and the continent. And as young people working with him, we're able to learn quite a bit from him, but also we acknowledge the transgressions. And the issue about the transgression is, what can we learn from this? What can we do to become better leaders by acknowledging where he went wrong? But as we mourn him, the emphasis is on the positive legacy. The emphasis is on this issue of saying we are mourning the founding leader of Zimbabwe, one of the founding mothers and fathers of the Zimbabwean nation.
We've seen reaction on social media. We've also seen reaction from people, just normal Zimbabweans in the streets, talking about how they have lost a father figure, an icon, an advisor. People who didn't really know him personally, but people who watched him as their president. Someone was saying that when they were born, Robert Mugabe was president. Their children were born in his presidency. And today, dealing and facing with the fact that former President Robert Mugabe is no more is a very difficult issue for them. What do you say to the people of Zimbabwe?
It's a conflicted legacy. It's a complex legacy. Number one, being president or being prime minister, being a leader of a country for 37 years is not a good idea. Being on top for 40 years is not a good idea. So the fact that people were born and they gave birth to children under one leader is something not to do. It's part of the negative legacy. Because diminishing returns and also corruption, also messianic complex, you become attached to the office. We need term limits on the African continent. 2 terms, you're out. Institutions are more important than individuals. A culture, a value system, constitutionalism is more important than the big man or the strong man or strong woman. So the lesson to Zimbabweans is, yes, let us learn from the positive aspects of the Mugabe legacy, but also let us not depend on personalities. Let us depend on strong institutions, strong value systems. Let's not allow ourselves to be under one man, one woman for 37 years. It's not a progressive idea. And so these are the lessons going forward. We must manage our economies effectively. We must accommodate the opposition. We must have free and fair elections, no rigging of elections, no violation of human rights. We don't want that, no corruption. I push them under the arena of lessons. What not to do as we celebrate and commemorate the legacy of Robert Mugabe. Remember, Kwame Nkrumah was taken out by a coup d'etat in '66. He also made mistakes in Ghana. But on balance, the OAU, Pan-Africanism, African unity, the liberation of the African continent, you have to give credit to Kwame Nkrumah. In the same way, we are now giving credit to Robert Mugabe. I am an opponent of Robert Mugabe for 30 years, from 1987 to 2017, but I'm here, giving respect, giving credit where credit is due.
A great, regarded as a great orator, a great speaker, a person who would get onto the podium and at the UN General Assembly and speak his mind and what he felt and what he wanted from the world, and be able to tell the world what he did not want as Zimbabwe. Just watching the clip there where he spoke of sanctions and telling Prime Minister Tony Blair that he doesn't want anything from him. They want to keep their Zimbabwe. You know, this sort of person, where to now for Zimbabwe?
This is why we're saying he made us proud to be Africans. You could disagree with him, but you could not help but admire the conviction, the ability to express yourself, the confidence, the guts. Most of these African leaders are not confident enough to speak the way he did at the UN. You know? But Mugabe, he could have been wrong on the issues, wrong on the agenda, but you can't help but admire the conviction, the guts to tell the West to go hang. Not many African leaders. Most of these African leaders are Mickey Mouse leaders without ability to speaking their minds to the West, to America, to Europe. Mugabe was able to do that. So which means we must learn that ability to be Africans, to be able to stand our ground and defend African humanity, and be able to defend the continent against the Chinese, against the Americans, against the Europeans. We must be a force to reckon with. And we need leaders of the caliber of Mugabe to be able to stand firm. The way Ben Bella, the way Kwame Nkrumah, the way Nyerere did, the way Sobukwe did. So these African leaders must learn from Mugabe that you must speak truth to power. You must be able to take the Americans and talk tough when you believe the African agenda is under threat. Mugabe was able to do that. And you don't have to agree with him, but you have to appreciate and respect the ability to stick to what he believed in and show conviction and be able to take a strategic and a strident position.
The current president of Zimbabwe, President Emmerson Mnangagwa, has referred to Robert Mugabe as a national hero.
Without a doubt, he is a national hero. It doesn't need Mnangagwa to crown him. Mnangagwa has no, status, has no standing to declare Robert Mugabe a hero. ZANU-PF has no standing, has no moral authority to declare Robert Mugabe a hero. Africans across the board, Zimbabweans across the board can do that on their own. We don't need Mnangagwa to declare Robert Mugabe a hero. We don't need ZANU-PF to declare Mugabe. He is a hero with or without Mnangagwa, a hero with or without ZANU-PF. That's why you have these global leaders speaking about this man. And that's why you have me coming from a record of 30 years of contradiction and conflict with Mugabe, but saying, yes, this man, taken on balance, is a national hero, is a Pan-African hero, a global hero. In spite of our contradictions and differences, we must give credit where credit is due.
Now, what should President Mnangagwa and his government take from the legacy of President Robert Mugabe with the current, economic standings of Zimbabwe?
I think for them, ZANU-PF and Mnangagwa must learn on the areas of what not to do. Don't rig elections. Don't be corrupt. Don't mismanage the economy. Don't brutalize your own people. Create an environment where people can vote for whoever they want. Bring about political reforms, economic reforms. So I think, insofar as I'm concerned, the current people running Zimbabwe, Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF, must learn more on the areas of what not to do. We need to see a difference in Zimbabwe. And that's my charge to them. And of course, they must celebrate the positive legacy, Pan-Africanism, liberation, land, education. But I think the focus of ZANU-PF and Mnangagwa is on the arena and the front of lessons, because we don't seem to see them picking up the proper lessons around democracy, around human rights, around the economy. The economy is currently collapsed in the country. Although we don't want to take advantage of the death of Mugabe to score points against them. But now that you ask me, my message is shape up or ship out.
Thank you so much for joining us, Professor.
Thank you very much.
That is academic and former Zimbabwean Deputy Prime Minister, Professor Arthur Mutambara, joining us live in studio. Time now for a quick